Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles. I used to think my marriage was solid. I was Elijah, 32 years old, and for the last 5 years I had built a life with Alice, my wife. On paper, we had everything: a beautiful home, stable careers, and a relationship that looked perfect to anyone on the outside. But reality was different. For 2 years, we had struggled to have a child. At first, there was hope. Then came the disappointment, the negative pregnancy tests, the silent nights where neither of us spoke because we were both waiting for the next try, the next appointment, the next failure. Then came the desperation. I still remember the way her voice cracked when she first suggested IVF. We were sitting on the couch, Alice curled up beside me, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. "It's our best chance," she whispered. Her eyes filled with something fragile, something like hope, but tainted with exhaustion. I didn't hesitate. "Of course," I said, pulling her into my arms. "We'll do whatever it takes." From that moment on, she took charge of the process. She handled the appointments, the paperwork, the scheduling. At first it made sense. Her job had more flexibility, and I was already drowning in deadlines at work. "You're stressed enough as it is, babe," she told me, brushing my concerns aside when I asked if I should be more involved. "It's just routine stuff. You don't need to be there for every step. The clinic will call you if they need anything important." And I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? When we finally went in for the actual embryo transfer, I was right beside her, holding her hand as the doctor explained the procedure. It was supposed to be our moment, the beginning of something beautiful. I remember squeezing Alice's fingers, whispering, "This is it," as she gave me a small, nervous smile. Now I realize that was the moment she erased me. Months passed. Alice's belly grew, and with it, so did my excitement. I spent hours reading about fatherhood, planning the nursery, imagining what our baby would be like. Then one evening, I was going through some routine paperwork, just checking over insurance details, making sure everything was in order when I saw it. A sperm donor ID, not my name, not my case number, a completely different identification code. At first, my brain refused to process it. I double-checked the paperwork, cross-referenced the donor ID with my own case number, but it didn't match. That was the first moment my stomach dropped. My hands felt clammy as I flipped through the pages again, scanning for some kind of explanation. There has to be a mistake, I told myself. A clerical error, a mix-up in the system. Something. Anything. But what it looked like. I wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. I wasn't paranoid, but I needed to be sure. The next morning, I drove straight to the IVF center. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly, I told myself I was just going to clear things up. There had to be some logical explanation, but deep down, something ugly and suffocating curled in my chest. When I stepped into the clinic, the cool air did nothing to ease the heat rising up my neck. The scent of disinfectant and faint lavender filled my nostrils, but all I could focus on was the tightness in my gut. I went straight to the front desk, keeping my voice calm, controlled, just a man looking for answers. "Hi," I said, offering the receptionist a tight smile. I was reviewing some paperwork for my wife's treatment and noticed something strange. "Can you confirm which specimen was used for our procedure?" She returned my smile, completely unaware of the storm she was about to unleash. "Of course, sir. Let me pull that up for you." Her fingers moved across the keyboard, the sound of clicking keys echoing in my ears. I waited, forcing my breath to stay even. Then she frowned. "That's odd," she murmured, leaning closer to the screen. My pulse kicked up. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "It looks like the specimen used wasn't the one originally assigned to your case." My heart stopped. "Come again?" She glanced at me, her smile now gone. "I mean, it looks like a donor specimen was used instead, but that should have required your signed consent." I felt the ground tilt beneath me. My throat went dry. I never signed anything. Her brows furrowed. She looked down at the file again, flipping a page. her expression shifting from confusion to something closer to unease. "Oh," she swallowed. "It says here that your wife authorized the change. Everything inside me went ice cold. So, you just switched the specimen without verifying with me." My voice was eerily calm, but beneath it, something cracked. The receptionist's face pad. She hesitated, then glanced at the screen again, as if searching for an escape. That's not supposed to happen. We have policies to prevent that." Then explain how it did. I could feel the pressure building behind my eyes, the kind of rage that comes when you realize your entire life has been ripped away from you in a single moment. She fumbled for words, her face twisting with panic. I don't know. This shouldn't have been possible. Let me speak to our supervisor. We need to look into why you weren't consulted." I didn't wait. I didn't care what she or anyone else at that clinic had to say. I turned on my heel and stormed out, my vision narrowing as I walked straight to my car. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. I didn't even remember the drive home, just the suffocating weight pressing down on my chest, the pulse hammering in my ears. By the time I got home, my entire body was vibrating with rage. I slammed the front door open, my footsteps heavy against the floor, and there she was, Alice, sitting on the couch, crying. She already knew. Her face was red and blotchy, her hands trembling as she wiped at her eyes. She barely looked up before she choked out, "You went to the IVF center." It wasn't a question. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her, feeling like I was looking at a stranger. She swallowed hard, glancing away. "My friend works there," she whispered. "She told me you were there. She told me you were fighting with them." My jaw clenched so hard I felt my teeth ache. "Is that the same friend who helped you switch the specimens?" She sucked in a sharp breath, her entire body flinching. That was it. That was all the confirmation I needed. She knew. She had always known. And now it was time to hear the excuses. My voice came out cold, quiet. "Why?" She hiccuped, rubbing at her face as fresh tears spilled over. You wouldn't understand." "Try me," she hesitated. Then the truth started spilling out in broken, stammering fragments. I wanted the best for our child," she whispered. I felt something inside me snap. "The best?" Meaning? Alice swallowed hard, fingers twisting together. I used my exes. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The world around me blurred into nothing but static. Why will you lie to me? You really want to know why, Elijah?" she said, tilting her head. "Fine, I wanted the best. Best. She let out a short laugh, shaking her head. Logan was an athlete, Elijah, a real man. Tall, strong, built for something more than just sitting behind a desk. And he's good-looking, way better than you. I wanted my child to have the best," she interrupted, her eyes gleaming. "I looked at you, and I knew I could do better. Logan's genes, his body, his talent, that's the kind of legacy I wanted. So I made sure his bloodline carried on, not yours." I felt something inside me snap, but she wasn't done. "You should be grateful, Elijah," she murmured, almost mocking. "I let you believe this was your baby. I was even willing to let you raise it. But, deep down, we both know you could never measure up." A breath slipped from my lips, and then I laughed. A dark, bitter, humorless laugh that echoed in the room like something out of a nightmare. This wasn't just betrayal. This was insanity. I don't remember how long I stood there staring at the woman I thought I knew. I don't remember when I walked out that door. But I remember one thing, the cold, solid thought that settled into my mind like stone. This wasn't going to end with just a divorce. No, that would be too easy. I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to erase her because she didn't just take my child away from me. She took my entire future, and I was going to make sure she lost hers too. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a hotel, turned off my phone, and sat, in silence, staring at the ceiling. The rage hadn't hit me yet, not the kind that makes you break things, scream, or lash out. This was something different, something colder, because Alice hadn't just cheated. She hadn't just lied. She had engineered my removal from my own child's life, and she thought I would never find out. Now I had a choice. I could go home, confront her immediately, let my anger explode in the moment, or I could let her believe she had won, let her think she was safe, right up until the moment I took everything from her. I chose the second option. The next morning, I sat across from my lawyer, my hands clenched into fists on the desk. "If I leave her now, what happens?" I asked. She glanced down at my case notes, her brow furrowing. "Legally, you're presumed the father unless you challenge paternity in court. If you don't contest it fast, you could still be held responsible for child support, regardless of biology." I swallowed hard. Alice had almost trapped me permanently. What if I prove she committed fraud? My lawyer sat back, tapping her pen against the desk. "That would change everything. If we can establish intent that she deliberately misled you, then you wouldn't be financially liable." She exhaled sharply. "But we need solid proof. The fertility clinic's documentation would help, but ideally, she met my eyes. We need a recorded admission." I nodded, my mind already working. "And what about our assets? You need to move them immediately. If she files first, she can argue for an even split." I had work to do. For the next few weeks, I played my role. I went home. I smiled. I pretended. I let Alice believe that I was still the oblivious, trusting husband she had always counted on. Meanwhile, I was silently dismantling everything she had built. Every night, after she fell asleep, I worked. I drained and transferred our shared accounts, ensuring that every dollar I had worked for was protected. I legally untangled the house from her claim, moving it into a trust under my name alone, and I documented everything. I went back to the fertility clinic, this time sitting face to face with a director. "I want an investigation," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I need to know exactly how this happened, how a donor was used without my consent." The director looked uncomfortable. "This is highly unusual," she admitted. "We have strict verification procedures in place." "Then explain how my wife was able to switch the donor without my signature." She frowned and turned to her screen, pulling up the digital records. I watched as her expression darkened. "She did sign off on the change herself," she said slowly, "but that should have triggered a secondary confirmation process with you." Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she scrolled through files. Then she froze. "Oh." I leaned forward. "What?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "It looks like the verification was bypassed." I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear her say it. "By who?" She hesitated, then exhaled sharply. "Her friend, Linda, the one who works here." I sat back, my jaw tight. "I want this in writing," I said. "A full report. I need proof that my wife and her friend orchestrated this." The director nodded, her face pale. "We'll launch an internal review immediately." 3 days later, I got the call. "Mr. Myers," the director said, her voice clipped. "We completed our investigation." She took a breath. "Alice's friend Linda manipulated the system to bypass the verification process. This was a serious breach of protocol. I already knew what was coming next. She's been terminated. The clinic fired her friend immediately. I got her confession, not all at once, not in some dramatic tide breakdown. No, Alice wasn't the kind to admit guilt so easily, but I didn't need her to. Instead, I played the long game. I let her think I hadn't figured it all out yet. I asked small, calculated questions, little things about her ex, Logan, about the clinic. I listened as she spoke, catching the slight hesitations, the inconsistencies. "Did you ever run into him?" "Your ex?" I asked casually one night over dinner. Alice barely glanced up from her plate. "Oh no, haven't seen him in years." But a week before, she had mentioned bumping into him at a cafe. A tiny slip, one she didn't even notice she had made. One by one, the cracks widened. I secured my legal escape. I filed a formal dispute with the fertility clinic, ensuring there was a record of my challenge. I arranged with my lawyer to contest paternity the moment I filed for divorce. And then I set up a meeting with him, the real father of the child, my wife's ex-Logan. At first he was very defensive, but when I laid out what I knew, when I showed him the clinic records proving that Alice had personally signed off on the donor switch, his face drained of color. He hadn't known. He had thought, just like me, that this child had been conceived the way Alice claimed. By the time I left that meeting, I had all the confirmation I needed. Now, all that was left was the final blow. I came home early that day. Alice was in the nursery, humming softly as she folded tiny baby clothes. She looked peaceful, content, like a woman who had everything she wanted. I stood in the doorway watching her for a long moment. She turned, smiling when she saw me. "You're home early," she said, walking toward me. I let her kiss me. I let her believe for just a few more seconds that her world was still intact. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, placing it on the dresser, beside her. Her smile faltered. "What's this?" "Open it." She hesitated, then pulled out the papers inside. First, the divorce papers, then the official notice from my lawyer revoking financial support. I watched as her eyes skimmed the first few lines, her breath catching. Confusion flickered across her face, then panic. "What is this?" she whispered. I met her gaze, my voice calm. "It's everything you deserve." Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages faster now, searching for something, anything that wasn't there. Her name? It wasn't on any major assets. The house, mine, the savings gone, transferred months ago. Any shared financial ties, dissolved. She went stiff, her breath hitching as her fingers tightened around the papers. "You," her voice shook. "You planned this?" I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Of course I did. You are not the only one who can plan. The only difference, mine was all legal." Her chest rose and fell unevenly, panic creeping into her expression. She gripped the edges of the documents as if they might somehow change if she just held on tight. "Enough. Elijah, please, we can fix this." I tilted my head, my voice as cold as I felt inside. "Fix what?" I interrupted. "You didn't want me. You wanted my name, my money, my life. You made that clear when you swapped our child for someone else's." Her face twisted, her lips parting as if to argue, but no words came. I watched her mind scramble for an excuse, a justification, something to make me doubt myself, to make me hesitate. But, the baby. I stared at her unblinking. Not my baby, not my problem. Alice started shaking with the weight of what was happening. "You can't just walk away from us," she whispered. I turned for the door, not even sparing her another glance. "Watch me behind me." I heard it. The first soft sob, the first crack in the perfect life she had built on lies. But it wouldn't be the last. The courtroom was silent, except for the occasional shuffle of papers and hushed murmurs between attorneys. I sat at my table, calm and composed. "Ready?" Alice sat across from me, her posture stiff, her hands gripping the edge of the table as if it was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. She knew she was losing, but she still thought she could talk her way out of it. She thought her tears, her usual performances would work. She was wrong this time. There was nothing to manipulate, no emotions to twist, no sympathy to beg for. Everything was documented. Everything was laid out in black and white. The fertility clinic report, the financial transfers, the written statements confirming that the donor switch had been premeditated. This wasn't an argument. It was an execution. The judge flipped through the files, adjusting her glasses. She turned her gaze to Alice's attorney. "Mrs. Myers, does your client have anything to dispute the evidence provided?" Her lawyer hesitated, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. He glanced at Alice, but she said nothing. She just sat there, pale, silent, defeated. Then he exhaled and shook his head. "No, Your Honor." The judge turned her gaze to Alice, then spoke with the same calm authority that had ruled the courtroom from the moment she entered. "Let's discuss financial resolution." Given the evidence of fraud, Mr. Myers's assets remain his sole property. Mrs. Myers will not receive any financial compensation from this divorce." Alice's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What?" she gasped. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering furiously in her ear, but she barely seemed to hear him. Her mouth opened and closed, her hands gripping the table as if steadying herself against a blow. The judge continued, her tone neutral, unyielding. "Additionally, given that Mr. Myers is not the biological father, the court recognizes his right to revoke any paternal claims to the child. He will not be financially obligated for child support." A low murmur rippled through the courtroom, a quiet wave of reaction from those watching. I kept my expression, composed, but inside a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying, lifted. Alice's lawyer cleared his throat, pushing his chair back and standing. "Your Honor, my client requests consideration for emotional damages due to the dissolution of the marriage. She was under stress when she—" The judge held up a hand, cutting him off. "Enough!" Her voice was firm, final. "Mrs. Myers willingly deceived her husband, knowingly altered medical procedures without his consent, and falsified financial statements. There will be no additional compensation awarded. Consider her lucky that I am not ordering a criminal investigation against her." Alice flinched as if the words themselves struck her. The judge tapped her gavel once. "This court finds in favor of the petitioner Elijah Myers." Case closed, and just like that, it was over. Alice sat frozen, staring at the papers in front of her as though she could change them by sheer will. Her lawyer sighed, closed his briefcase, and didn't say another word to her. He had done all he could, and he knew it. I stood, buttoned my suit jacket with slow precision, and turned toward the exit. I didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, I took a deep breath. The air felt different, lighter, cleaner, free. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolled to her number, and blocked it. Then, without hesitation, I deleted every last trace of her from my life. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. After everything that had happened, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let the fertility clinic walk away from this unscathed. They had played a direct role in this mess, and I intended to make them pay for it. I consulted my lawyer and started preparing a lawsuit. The case was airtight. The clinic had violated their own protocols, allowed unauthorized tampering with genetic material, and completely failed in their duty of care. A public trial would have been a nightmare for them. Endless scrutiny, lost credibility, and lawsuits from other patients questioning whether their own procedures had been compromised. It didn't take long for them to reach out. They wanted to keep things quiet to avoid dragging their name through the mud. After a few rounds of negotiations, they offered a settlement, 7 figures, tax-free, in exchange for my silence and a signed non-disclosure agreement. I took it, not because I needed the money. I had already made sure that Alice wouldn't walk away with a sin of mine, but because it was justice, because it was proof that they had screwed up and they knew it, and because at the end of the day, I had already won. The real kicker began after the divorce. Alice, still reeling from losing everything, decided she wasn't going down alone. She turned her sights on Logan, the man she had chosen over me, the man whose genons she thought were superior. She expected him to step up to claim the child, and more importantly to pay for it. But Logan wasn't interested in playing daddy. She took him to court, demanding child support, presenting him as the biological father. I almost laughed when I heard about it. The arrogance, the entitlement. It was so Alice. She had orchestrated this entire mess, convinced she was outsmarting everyone, and now she was scrambling, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. The courtroom was tense the day of the hearing. Alice sat there, her usual mask of confidence slipping, while Logan, looking as uncomfortable as I'd ever seen him, barely met her gaze. His lawyer argued the case swiftly and efficiently. Logan was a sperm donor, nothing more. He had signed no agreements to raise the child, made no promises, had no legal responsibility. Alice had made this choice entirely on her own. The judge didn't even deliberate long. The ruling was clear. Logan had no financial obligation. He wasn't a father, he was a donor. Alice had played her hand, and she had lost. I wasn't in that courtroom, but when I got the news, I could picture it perfectly. Alice's face twisting, in disbelief, her desperate arguments falling on deaf ears. She had built her entire life on manipulation, thinking she could control everyone around her. But reality had finally caught up with her. A few months later, the baby was born. And, with that, the final cruel twist in Alice's grand plan revealed itself. The child, her so-called perfect baby, had Down syndrome. I didn't know how to feel when I first heard the news. Part of me felt an odd, quiet sorrow for the child, innocent, unaware of the circumstances of his birth, yet burdened with the weight of his mother's choices. He hadn't asked to be the product of manipulation, of deception. He was just a baby who deserved love, care, and acceptance. As for Alice, I didn't even know what to call the emotion I felt toward her. It wasn't sympathy, it wasn't satisfaction, it was something in between, something strange and unsettling. She had wanted a perfect baby, a beautiful, athletic child who would grow up strong, successful, and admired. She had chosen Logan because of his looks, his genes, because she thought she could engineer her ideal future. But genetics don't take orders. They don't bend to ambition or selfish desires. And Alice, in all her arrogance, never imagined that. Logan, the so-called better man, could carry a genetic disorder that would change everything. She had tried to play God, and she had failed. Now she was truly alone. No husband, no financial support, no doing father to step in and share the burden. And worst of all, no perfect baby, just reality, cold, unchangeable, and merciless. For the first time since this all started, I wondered what was going through her mind. Was she devastated? Ashamed? Did she finally understand what she had done? Or was she still clinging to her delusions, refusing to accept the consequences? I didn't know, and honestly, I didn't care. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.